you so much, Daniel. Friends, the psalm book that we have in our scriptures has been famously termed an anatomy of the soul. That in it we can find all of the winding caverns of ourselves and give voice to things that oftentimes we don't have the language for. I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't know what to pray. I don't know what words to say. These psalms are ancient, rich texts that teach us how we can know God more deeply and how to express those deep inner parts of us that feel inexpressible. So if that's ever you, turn to the Psalms. They have much to teach us today. Good morning, y'all. Good morning. Glad you guys are here. It is good, so good to see you. I want to start our time with the story of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was a leading Jewish scholar and sage way back in the 1st century. He was called the chief of the sages because his philosophy and wisdom was known all around the ancient Jewish world. And back in that time, it was common for rabbis of his stature especially to travel from town to discuss important matters of faith and theology. And so one day, Rabbi Akiva was walking this long, winding road. And he kept with him only a few small possessions. He had a rooster, as we all do, right? He had a donkey, and he had a lamp to light his way. And eventually, he came upon a certain town, and night was quickly dawning, and so he decided to seek out a place to rest in this town. He came upon a home there and knocked on the door and asked if they had a place he could stay for the night, a spare room, somewhere on the floor, even out in the shed with the animals. But he was turned away. And so he went to the next house, same result. And the next house, same result. Every home in this village turned him away. And it might seem to us that the rabbi was cursed, but that's not the end of the story. As the good rabbi neared the end of his wits, wandering around this town, he happened upon this lush field with soft grass and a giant tree in the middle of the field that he could lie under for the night. He thought this might be more comfortable than even those homes. And so it might seem at that point to us that the rabbi was blessed, but that's not the end of the story. Just as he started to settle in for the night, a strong force of wind came and blew out his lantern, and he had nothing to relight it with. And then, just after he had fallen asleep, a coyote came and snatched up his rooster. Don't you hate when that happens? And before the night was over, a mountain lion had attacked and killed his donkey as well. Surely the rabbi is cursed, right? That's not the end of the story. The rabbi woke the next morning and went into the town to find the entire place was completely ransacked. An army had marched through that very night and took all of the villagers there into captivity. And the rabbi realized that had he still had his lantern, they might have seen him in the field and taken him away. And had he still had his rooster, they might have heard it crow. Had he still had his donkey, they might have heard it bray. I learned this week that that's the noise that a donkey makes, braying. I didn't know that. Only because all those things were taken from him was he spared from abuse. And so on and on and on, the story goes with a clear message. What appears to be blessing and triumph can often turn out to be terrible. And what appears to be terrible can often be transformed into something remarkably good, something you never could have foreseen in the moment. And the takeaway from that story, it's not to stoically distance ourselves from the ups and downs of life or to deny the emotions that come with blessing or curse. Those emotions are important to pay attention to and voice. And it's also not meant to make us passive or skeptical or cynical, to think that nothing good could ever come. The point of that story, it's teaching us the practice of faithful humility. It's teaching us to trust that in any given moment, we won't always know the why behind things. It's teaching us to remember that there is something beyond whatever might be happening right in front of us at a given moment. See, the truth is that most of our life is like standing behind a giant tapestry while it's being woven. You guys know what tapestries are? Have you seen tapestries? This is the backside of a tapestry, what it looks like. A chaotic tangle of threads. And the idea is that these things come together to form an impressive image, but the back of the tapestry is just this. Knots and tangles. There's no apparent pattern or symmetry. It's just chaos and color. And this is where we live most of our lives. We stare at the mess of a world and try to guess what it's saying about me and about God and about where this world is headed. And so we search for patterns. We grab hold of a few strands, convinced that they're forming into one thing, and then we make interpretations out of it. This must be a blessing. This must be a curse. God must not love me. God must really love me. This is what God is up to. We often reinforce those interpretations with massive, alarmist, existential weight when we go through things. We take one event and then make a grand story out of it. Just look at our headlines. A few recent ones. The US government shutdown will spark global instability. Massive, existential weight. Jesus is returning on September 24th, 2025. Amen. No one's ever been wrong about that, by the way, that claim. The economy is beyond saving after recent layoffs. That's decided that the end of the story is based on one part of the tapestry. A baby raccoon terrorizes town after getting drunk off fermented peaches. The world is going out of control, friends. And I don't mean to minimize those things. There are important things we need to consider responding well to, especially drunk baby raccoons. But when we are constantly being surrounded by messaging that reads every moment, every video, every thread on the back of the tapestry as determinative of where everything is headed, it's going to shape how we show up in the world. It's going to do something to us. When we are surrounded by existential language like this enough, we become paralyzed by anxiety. Doom scrolling is just our default practice. Headlines, social media, blogs, podcasts, until we're all convinced that it's going to burn next Tuesday. Just look at our pop culture. What do people tend to say about the end of the world? Everyone thinks it's going to be a bad time. It's not going to go well. I don't know if you've seen the movies, but zombies are definitely coming for us, people. And if their lumbering and lurching figures don't get us, the robots will. We've got all these amazing technological achievements, but in the end, the computers will get too smart and destroy us. Eventually, one disease will wipe us all out. Eventually, the mission will actually be impossible, and Tom Cruise cannot save us from the nukes. Most of us walk through life, either consciously or subconsciously, with a story about the world that paralyzes us. These chaotic threads aren't headed anywhere good. And if we're not paralyzed by it, we often just like to numb ourselves to it. It's one of our best strategies to cope. We just choose to live naively. We refuse to engage because the weight of the world is just too much. I know people who don't read any news at all, and at some level I get it. I know people who try to fill every free space in their life with as much entertainment and distraction as they can, just because they don't want to deal with the weight of everything. And so the result is a culture of folks who live with a perpetual low-grade sense of despair. I was just talking to a friend of mine last night about this, looking around a space where we saw all these sorts of people living with this sense of despair, trying to fill their lives with distraction. As Henry David Thoreau put it, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. We feel increasingly ill-equipped to respond to things we go through or things out there in the world because it doesn't seem like anything we do matters. Anything we do has meaning in the end. It's all just a chaotic mess of threads. I've spoken to many of you about this sort of experience, and again, I heard the same ache from you. Our souls ache for a life of meaning in the midst of a chaotic, unpredictable, and uncontrollable world. Our souls ache for a story of life in the midst of the stories of death that surround us on all sides. Our souls ache for a better life under the sun. And the teacher in the book of Ecclesiastes feels that same way. Qoheleth, that's his name. The teacher, it's the main speaker in this book. And he has undertaken a massive task. Search everything under the sun, everything in this chaotic tangle of threads that we call human life, to make sense of it. He's like a great philosophy professor, asking all of these same questions that we ask. What's the point in any of this? Why do good times fade quickly? Why can't we hold on to joy and peace? What does my life really mean? And so far, we've seen him explore all sorts of topics: wisdom, laughter, pleasure, humanitarian efforts. Wine gets a special shout out. But of all of them, he said the same thing: they're vapor. They aren't strong enough to carry human meaning and purpose. And so now, as he continues his reflection in chapter 3, he starts to explore the ebb and flow of all of human existence. He's sifting through the tapestry with us. And in his reflections, he gives us wisdom on what it might look like to lead a life of meaning precisely there. So friends, if you have a Bible, I invite you to open it with me. By the way, anybody using the free Bibles that we handed out last week? Yeah, a couple of you. We have some copies of these. These are our free gifts to you. If you would like a copy, it's this beautified, illuminated picture of the book of Ecclesiastes. It's really helpful to read through. So if you'd like one of those, let me know after service. I'll make sure to get you one. We're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, starting in verse 1. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. For everything, there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. But what gain have the workers from their toil? I've seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he's put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from beginning to end. So I know there's nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they should live. Moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken away from it. God has done this so that all should stand in awe before him. That which is already has been, that which is to be already is, and God seeks out what has gone by. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Now, would you pray with me, friends? Oh, Heavenly Father, so much of our world these days looks like a tangled mess, a chaotic web. We come before you because it's really difficult to try to figure this out on our own. It's really, really existentially burdensome. And so we pray today that you would give us a bit of clarity on who you are and what you're up to. That by going into the mess, not ignoring it, not distracting, but just by looking at it, and then allowing your word to speak to it, we pray that you would get some clarity into our hearts and our minds. That you would give us a sense of what this all is about and what you're up to and how we can be a part of it. Would you soften our hard hearts, Father? Melt our icy hearts. Unclog our ears. Open our eyes to you today. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Cemeteries are great classrooms. It's true. When's the last time you walked around a cemetery for a little bit? You look at all of the epigraphs and the stones. You're surrounded by those who have come and gone. You let your feet and hands press into the dirt that you'll end up in eventually. It's a great spiritual practice. Looking at death is often sobering in a good way. I've seen this as a pastor over the years. I get the privilege of being with people in some of the most pivotal moments of their lives. Birth and marriage and death. And it's often fascinating to me. When people are at a wedding, they usually see the pastor as kind of unimportant to the whole thing. They expect some heartwarming words, maybe some humor, maybe a nice feel-good Bible passage, but what they really want is a quick ceremony so that we can get to the real show, dancing and drinks and the rest. But at a funeral, everyone is locked in. They fall silent. Nobody's checking their watch. Nobody's paying attention to the bride's bouquet or to the groomsman about to fall over and faint. At a funeral, people hang on every word. Because funerals expose with unflinching certainty something we spend most of our days trying to ignore. We aren't in control. Right? Our lives and deaths unfold in a rhythm that we cannot command or dictate, and we hate that. Our lives mostly consist of desperately, anxiously trying to grasp after control, trying to give the tapestry of our days a meaning and a purpose. We plan our lives to death. We fill every square inch of our calendars. We color code them and sync them to our devices and stuff them with activity so that they might hold back the chaos of life. We try and prolong our days with health. We only eat organic, locally sourced, grass-fed, free-range, artisanal, small batch, handcrafted, solar-powered, non-GMO, sustainable, ethically sourced farm-to-table food, right?
That's right.
That's right. We go to hot yoga. We keep up our gym memberships. We close our rings on our Apple Watches. And we pour everything we have into our work and our relationships. We want to make an impact. We want to be the change we want to see in the world. And none of those things are bad in and of themselves. But oftentimes they're rooted in this deep insecurity that wants to fight off the truth that we don't have the control we think we do. We want to fight off the truth that time is always in the end passing, and that therefore everything we do in time is passing with it. That's the thing about time. It is always ticking. Friends, you've never been older than you are right now. And you will never be younger than you are right now. Time is a tyrant. Welcome to church. And the truth is that we often want to rant and rave against time in what we do. The Welsh poet Dylan Thomas wrote it best. As he watched his sick father move closer to death, he pleaded with him, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." See, there is something deep within the heart of humanity that sees our mortality, this ticking clock of life, as something that's more than we can bear, which is actually really unique in humanity. My dog, entirely unconcerned with the ticking clock of his life. Only cares about walks and play and naps and his delicious brown rice and lamb kibble that we give him. But we humans, we have something deep within us that longs for, that pleads for permanence, meaning in the middle of this chaotic tapestry. That's the theme that the teacher is exploring in chapter 3. That we are people caught in passing time that long for eternity. People caught in tangled threads that long for a beautiful image to bring them together. And he points out to us a few different things we can do in response to this tension we find in ourselves. A few different pieces of wisdom that we can apply in the midst of the tapestry of life. 3 things for you that he teaches us. He says we need to learn life's limits. We need to live with fear. And we need to look to the larger work of art. Learn life's limits, live with fear, and look to the larger work of art. First, we have to learn life's limits. He starts out with a poem here in chapter 3 that on the surface sounds really beautiful. This remains maybe the most quoted passage in the whole book of Ecclesiastes. It was turned into a popular song back in the 60s, some of you may remember, by the Byrds. It's called Turn, Turn, Turn. And usually people have seen this poem as comforting. It's a calming text about the beauty of time. But that's not what the teacher is saying. Look closer at the contrasts he makes in the song. He says, for instance, there's a time to be born and a time to plant, a time to heal and build and laugh and dance, embrace and love. Oh, how pretty. How comforting. So many things that make life beautiful and good and joyful and full. But notice what he contrasts that with. There's a time to die, a time to kill, a time to break down, a time to weep, a time to lose, a time to hate, a time for war. Those aren't the things we want to hear. For as much beauty as there is in life, there's all sorts of pain and loss and grief too. As the 3rd century church father, Gregory Thaumaturgus put it, this present time is filled with all manner of things that are most contrary to each other. And notice that he's not being sentimental about that. He's not pointing out how it's all beautiful, the good and the bad. Look at how he evaluates it. After this poem, he says, "What gain have the workers from their toil?" That is, what's the point of all of this? As soon as things come good for a season, bad things show up. As soon as we think we got things figured out, some event comes that make us realize we don't. We can't find meaning in all of this ebb and flow. That's actually his next point. He says, I've seen the busyness that God has given everyone to be busy with. He's made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he's put a sense of past and future in their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from beginning to end. So not only is life difficult to discern, but God has given us a heart that longs to see the full picture and can't. God has made us people who long to know the purpose in everything, but don't have the vision or the clarity to see the beginning and the end. So yes, life is full of seasons that include beauty and pain, but when we experience them, we can never fully know their significance. That's what he's getting at. We can never fully know why things happen the way that they do, even though we long to know. Why is it that one of my parents' friends goes in for a skin check and leaves with a clean bill of health, and another one hears the same lesion as an aggressive form of cancer? Why did someone I went to school with coast through classes and land a six-figure job through family connections while another friend worked hard for a teaching degree that pays half as much for twice the work? Why did the housing market become impossible just as I started looking while people 5 years ago bought great homes at a fraction of today's prices and interest rates? Why? This is how life goes. In a more appropriate version of the popular phrase, stuff happens. But he doesn't say this to make us cynical. He's not saying this to say, well, everything's predetermined and you have no control. Good luck. He's actually saying we do have a choice here, but it's not about the results of our life. Our choice is how we will live in a life that is beyond our control. Our choice is not about how life goes. It's about how we will go with life. There's a great scene in The Fellowship of the Ring, or conversations happening between Frodo and Gandalf. Yes, you're nerds, you can celebrate with me this morning. The context is that these two characters are caught up in a sudden rising of an ancient evil, one that is threatening all of the world and is in direct pursuit of each of them. And furthermore, if they don't accomplish their task, which is destroying the ring of power, then it's almost assured that evil is going to triumph. In the midst of the anxiety of that moment, Frodo says this, I wish it need not have happened in my time. I wish it need not have happened in my time. How often have we repeated those same words or some version of those words? How often have we looked around at the chaotic threads of our world and said, I wish it need not have happened in my time? But then look at Gandalf's response. Remember, Gandalf in this story is very much a Christ-like figure. He says this, so do I. And so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. That is what the teacher wants us to see. We need to learn to live within the limits of life as it comes to us. Instead of trying to read the tea leaves or trying to force things to happen on our own terms or constantly craving the next season, we learn to receive. We learn to respond to the various seasons of life with gratitude and courage and character. Friends, what matters most in life is not the results of your actions. It's not the things you accomplish. It's not the comfort or security you obtain. What matters is who you become in the midst of all those things. What matters is your response to it all. And so living wisely means knowing what time it is in life and living with character precisely there. It means trusting that there is a bigger tapestry that goes beyond any of the tangled threads that I'm looking at right now. There's a brilliant minister named Qoheleth who talked about this. He's from Tonga, which is a small little Pacific island, and he spent extensive time ministering to the Aboriginals and natives of the island of Australia. And in preaching the gospel to them, he found a posture to their lives that actually fits this message of Ecclesiastes really well. He says this, to borrow from indigenous Australians, God's work is secret business. It's ironic that this wisdom text is about the limits on the ability of humans to discern. In this light, the wise person is the one who does not know and who does not understand. The wise person is ignorant of what God is doing. Friends, the one who knows the most is the one who knows they don't know that much. The one who is strongest is the one who is aware of their weakness. The one who has most control of their life is the one who is most aware of who is really in control. And by the way, there might actually be a hidden grace in all of this from God. Think about it this way. Imagine you knew the beginning and end of everything. Imagine you knew the day you were going to die. Wouldn't that be paralyzing? You'd be living every day with a sense of dread and anxiety and fear and hurry and paralysis. Or you might just think, none of this is worth it anyway. It's all passing. Knowing and controlling what only God can know and control doesn't give us freedom. It breaks us. Thank God we aren't God. Thank God we don't know everything. There's a great prayer written by a guy named Reinhold Niebuhr that I'm sure many of you have heard parts of at some point that I think summarizes this well. I'd encourage you, build a habit of praying this prayer on a regular basis. Post it on your mirror, have it on a note on your phone, set an alarm to read it each day. I think this is a perfect application of what the teacher's telling us. He prays this. God, Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, and trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. That's what it looks like to live within life's limits. And that actually leads to the second point the teacher gives us about wisdom here. That this approach teaches us to live with fear. Now look again at verses 13 through 14. It is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in their toil. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken away. God has done this so that all should stand in awe before him. You see what he's realizing? Since the times are ultimately always in God's hands, our response is to stand in awe before God. Another way of putting that phrase in the Bible is that we are to fear God. That's actually one of the scripture's favorite ideas, favorite things to tell us to do. Fear God, as Proverbs puts it. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And if we're being honest, that's a phrase that most of us don't love. Mostly because we don't get it. When we hear fear, we think horror movies. We think The Shining. And so we think God is supposed to make us afraid of him, afraid of his power and control, to cower in terror from him. That's actually not what God desires at all. In fact, more than 100 times in the Bible, God encourages people not to be afraid. To Abraham, he says, "Don't be afraid, I am your shield, your very great reward." To Israel at the Red Sea, he says, "Don't be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." To Joshua, he says, "Be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." To Isaiah and his audience in Jerusalem, he says, "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by my name, you are mine. And when you pass through the waters, I will be with you." To Mary, the angel says, "Don't be afraid. You found favor with God." To the shepherds in their field, the angels say, "Don't be afraid, I bring you good news of great joy." And to his disciples, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Don't be afraid." Hopefully you're getting the picture. The Bible makes really clear the fear of the Lord is precisely about not being afraid. So what do the teacher and Proverbs actually mean when they talk about the fear of the Lord as the response to this tapestry of life? What does it mean for us to fear the Lord? And it's important to remember that words usually don't carry just one meaning. And usually words can be used to mean a variety of different things depending on the context they're in. That's true in our day. That's true in the Bible. But what you find is that when you do this study of the fear of the Lord across the whole of the scriptures, there's this remarkably robust picture of a new sort of life that comes when we fear the Lord. It includes, it's not limited to, but it includes some of these things. It includes close trust and intimacy and friendship with God. Psalm 25 says, "The friendship of the Lord is for those who fear him." Friendship with God. It also means a life of purity and goodness. 2 Corinthians 7. "Since we have these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from every defilement of flesh and spirit, making holiness perfect in the fear of God." Purity, goodness. It's a life of deep contentment, according to Psalm 34. "Taste and see that the Lord is good. Happy are those who take refuge in him. Oh, fear the Lord, you his holy ones, for those who fear him have no want." Contentment. The fear of the Lord is also a life that tangibly acts on behalf of the marginalized and the vulnerable. Way back in Exodus 1, we actually just read this story a few months ago. Pharaoh demands an elimination of Hebrew boys. He tells the midwives to kill all the Hebrew boys. But look at the response. He says, "When you act as midwives to the Hebrew women, see them on the birth stool. If it is a son, kill him. But if it's a daughter, she shall live." But the midwives feared God. They did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but they let the boys live. So a life that fears God is a life of trusted intimacy and contentment with God. It is filled with inner and outer goodness. It works for the good of all people, particularly those on the margins. That sounds like the sort of life that all of us are craving, longing for. That's what the teacher is saying should be our response to the fleeting nature of life in time. Because we believe that our lives are in the hands of God, then our response is to reverently trust him, to reverently give our lives to him. It's to lead a life with him in the middle of the frayed edges of this tapestry. And when we do that, when we trust that the whole of our lives and human history are in God's hands, we start to live with this new fusion of humility and confidence. We live with humility because we know the world doesn't fall on our shoulders. So we can humbly love and humbly serve and humbly live without the pressure of having to fix everything. We trust that God is writing a bigger story. So we just step into our part of that story that's right in front of us. Friends, I have good news for you. You don't need to be God. You don't need to forge comprehensive meaning from your life. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to make the universe go. It's not all waiting on you. We live with humility, and we also live with confidence. Because we know that the beginning and the end are in the hands of God. And nothing can disrupt that larger story. You guys, with God, there is nothing broken that will not be made whole. There is nothing crooked that will not be made straight. There is nothing sick that will not be healed. Nothing shameful that will not be forgiven. Nothing dead that will not be resurrected. And we know all of this is true because we have something that Qoheleth, the teacher, didn't. We actually have a glimpse into the bigger story that God is writing. That's the final part we need to see here. We need to learn to look to the larger work of art. Noah, if you could put the backside of that tapestry back up. See, while the teacher couldn't see the beginning and end amidst all the threads, you and I have been given a glimpse of the beginning and end. His name is Jesus. In Revelation 22, he says as much. He says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. In the middle of the passing and fleeting nature of life, there is a bigger story that God is writing. And its final chapter is Jesus. It is in him that we get a glimpse of the front of the tapestry. Christ shows us the work of art that God is weaving in the mess of history. That's the whole point of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It's to show us what God is doing in the midst of the chaotic threads. In the birth of Jesus, God takes on flesh. God enters into the tangled mess of human life and the world. God does not stand far off from us. God does not become unrelatable to us. God becomes like us so that we might catch a glimpse of him, so that we might know him. And then in the life that he lived, Jesus rewove the chaotic threads. Threads of sickness and pain he healed. Threads of sin and shame he forgave. Threads of loneliness he welcomed into belovedness. The kingdom of death and pain and brokenness he wove into a kingdom of life and peace and wholeness. Which means in the middle of all our chaotic strands, if we ever want a picture of the tapestry that God is weaving, we don't have to wonder. We don't have to speculate. We just have to look at Jesus. What he has done and what he is doing, that is the true story of the universe. As Galatians 4:4 puts it, when the fullness of time had come, that is, when it was time to put right all things, when it was time to make right all wrong, God sent his son. And then in Jesus' death, he took on the darkest threads of all. Suffering and abandonment, injustice, death itself. And he rewove them into redemption. He took all of those things into himself and allowed them to kill him so that they no longer killed us. The cross is the ultimate picture of the frayed tapestry being turned upside down. The very image of evil and death and brokenness gets reshaped into an image of life. The very image of worldly power and domination and empire is reshaped into an image of meek and sacrificial love. The very image of retribution is shaped into an image of forgiveness and grace. The cross is the cosmic declaration of what God has done to all of the powers of death. It is the spark that ignites God's revolution in the world. And it culminates in his resurrection. He finally invites us to experience his reweaving now and into eternity. The death did not win in the cross. He shows us that the worst thing is never the last thing. That all the tangled threads of today are woven into a stunning image of tomorrow. That all that is sad will come untrue. That all that is wrong will be made right. That all will be well and all manner of things will be well. So friends, whatever time you're in right now, birth or death, planting or uprooting, mourning or dancing, you need to know there's an invitation for you precisely there. Jesus Christ is inviting you to go through all those things as part of his redemptive story. To see the image of the front of the tapestry in the middle of the chaos. He's inviting you to trust your life and your death to him with humility and confidence, because when you do, you suddenly catch a glimpse of what he's up to. It's in his life that we find our life. In his death that we find the death of all our brokenness and sin. In his resurrection that we find ourselves resurrected to a life of wholeness. So today, would you take a few quiet moments with me to reflect and contemplate on the image of Jesus? Would you come before Christ and ask with me, where are you redeeming and restoring even now? Would you bring your life before him with me again? I'm going to have Annalise come up and play some music as we reflect on the image of Christ and what he's doing in and through our world and in and through our lives. And then I'll pray to wrap our time. Join me in contemplating Christ, friends.